Welcome to my diversity YouTube video. And for my video, I decided to do it on understanding privilege in the classroom. Now, some of you may be wondering, what is privilege? Well, privilege is defined as a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. Now, privilege, it can be hard to understand at first because a lot of times you take for granted what even counts as a privilege. I know for one, I certainly didn't think some of the things that were in my life were privileges until I took this course and started to understand more and more about what could and could not be defined as privileges. But now I can certainly say that my eyes have been opened and I'm going to share the findings that I've had throughout the semester. So, to start off, about myself, I am an African American male who was born in Detroit, Michigan. I was raised in what I would call the middle class, and I was raised by my stepfather and by my mother. Now, I will say that already I wouldn't think of any of these as really privileges. None of these really make me feel like I was set apart from anyone else or I have an advantage over anybody else. But that was my mindset going into this class and before reading any of the modules that actually taught me about some of the things going on throughout diversity. After going through them, I realized the mere fact of even being born in America, that alone is a privilege. Being in middle class, that is a privilege. And a big one is even having two parents. That's a huge privilege that not everyone is afforded. And going back to my first one, being born in America is a huge privilege that not everyone is afforded. And this led me to actually my first field observation, which I did on immigration. Reason why for my first field observation I chose immigration is because I always knew that immigrants faced loads of challenges coming over to the US, but I certainly did not know to what degree those challenges were. So thankfully, I had the opportunity to interview two people that immigrated over from Nigeria. Now, what I learned was mind blowing. A lot of the things they told me ranged from the quotes seen on the screen, such as like they had to work twice as hard as anybody else around them just to get half as much as they did. I recall them talking about the fact that at one point, a father, he had three jobs at one time just to maintain income for his family. And it was surprising to him because over in Nigeria, when you think about America, he said that it's just told to you that money is basically being thrown over here. They don't think that when you come over here necessarily you're going to have three jobs. It's just told as if money is everywhere. They're practically handing it out. So when they get over here and they realize that no, you have to have connections, you have to have multiple jobs, it's actually really hard for them and it's really eye opening. Another thing that was really surprising to me was the fact that even if you have a master's degree and you get it from an education system over in Nigeria, when you come over here, you have to then go get your education again. You have to go through school again, get another master's degree because we look down upon the degrees from another country like they're lesser than ours. And so all the work you did, it's basically goes for nothing. And then lastly, one of the biggest eye-opening moments for me was after they said that the long, arduous process of becoming a citizen and getting that green card, that even after receiving it, they still don't truly feel American because people are always going to ask them about their accent and always ask them where they're from. And it's hard to feel like a US citizen when you always have people that are judging you just by what you sound like and not who you actually are. A second field observation, I chose to do it on economic status. Now, for this field observation, I actually got the opportunity to do a program called the Spark Program. It lasted 10 weeks and it was actually at West Georgia. Now, we worked with at risk youth, and these are kids that have been labeled throughout life or defined as bad kids. But I was quickly able to learn that these are very false terms for these youth. A lot of times these are kids that aren't understood or aren't even heard. A lot of times that they just don't even have anybody to talk to or to come to about problems that they're facing. And they really don't have any good influences in their life to know any better than the things that they've been raised on. A lot of times they're getting in fights and they're stealing, but it's because that's all they know. That's all they've grown up around. And so I was able to learn through the Spark program that sometimes we're too quick to judge these quote unquote bad kids, especially the ones that are already coming into your class perhaps in the future and that already have a record, if you will, and that maybe some teachers have already warned you about. But in actual fact, these kids are some of the nicest kids. When the program first started, we had youth who wouldn't even talk to you. I remember going up to one of the youth and just saying, "Hey, what's up? How are you doing? What's your name?" And they wouldn't even look at me and they walked right past me. And I was shocked, surprised that that would even be a response from somebody. But by the third week, that same kid was opening up, was talking, was coming, was joining in the projects that we were doing. And it was just so great to see how many of them were willing to open up as the program went along. I think a lot of times we don't realize that some of these kids are in high school or even middle school and they're having to take on jobs after school and work 6 hours each day after getting off of school to help provide for their family, maybe help it take care of their siblings. A lot of times their parents might not even be around because they only have one parent and that parent is perhaps working two jobs just to be able to afford taking care of their family. And so this in itself is a privilege that these kids are without. And so certain times they end up getting into the wrong crowds. And these are things that we have to think of before we start automatically judging them. So, lastly, I want to leave everybody with advice for future educators. I think that we need to realize that the race isn't exactly a fair one for all students and all youth. Not everyone is going to have the privileges of the other classmates, and not everyone starts in the same place. But that doesn't mean that we can't help them get there. We have to view students as individuals and try to relate to each one differently. You never know what background one student may have and what background another student may have. And we have to work together with the students to try and help them understand where each other are coming from. You never know if some of your students are immigrants or their parents are immigrants. You never know what socioeconomic status that they may be coming from. It's we have to try as future educators to put ourselves in the shoes of the students. And we have to understand that even though privilege exists, we can't use it as a crutch for the students. So want to say to everyone that we should do our best to try and be a privilege to our future students that they were able to have us be an impact in their lives.